A Harvard law student walks the streets of Boston, her mind focused on her bright future. But in seconds, everything changes. A store alarm blares, a racist cop's smirk tightens, and cold handcuffs snap around her wrists. She demands justice. The courtroom does not care. But justice is coming, from an unexpected place. The U.S. Marshals are watching. And today, they will turn the tables in a way no one saw coming. Boston's skyline gleamed in the golden afternoon sun, its towering skyscrapers reflecting the light like polished mirrors. The city pulsed with energy, horns blaring from impatient cab drivers, the rhythmic click of heels against pavement, and the murmur of conversations between businessmen clutching their coffee cups. Maya Thompson walked with quiet confidence, weaving effortlessly through the bustling streets. At just 24, she was already making her mark at Harvard Law School, specializing in civil rights law. Her entire existence was built on defying the odds, breaking barriers, and fighting for justice. She had grown up knowing that justice, though promised to all, was rarely delivered fairly. Her mother, a single parent who worked long hours as a hospital technician, had raised Maya to be resilient. Every step Maya took was because of her mother's sacrifices, the long shifts, the unpaid overtime, the quiet exhaustion in her eyes that she never spoke about. Maya had worked relentlessly, refusing to be another statistic. No handouts, no shortcuts, just hard work and determination. She was the first in her family to go to college, let alone Harvard. She had clawed her way up, securing scholarships, internships, and top grades, all to build a future where she could fight the very injustices her mother had faced. Today, she had an important meeting with Robert Callahan, a well-known civil rights attorney and her mentor. A coffee meeting to discuss her career. A moment that should have shaped her future. But today was not going to be about career growth. It was going to be about survival. Boston's financial district was a world of polished glass buildings, exclusive boutiques, and professionals walking with a sense of self-importance. Men in expensive suits barked orders into their AirPods, while women in heels clutched designer bags and moved with effortless precision. A yellow cab came to a screeching halt, honking aggressively as a cyclist swerved past. A sharply dressed banker checked his Rolex before stepping into a black town car. The air carried the aroma of freshly brewed espresso from a nearby cafe, mingling with the faint scent of expensive cologne. Maya took a deep breath, embracing the energy of the city, a place that once felt out of reach, but now felt like home. For years, she had worked twice as hard, proving to everyone, professors, classmates, and even herself, that she deserved to be here. For the first time, she truly felt like she belonged. Her steps were steady, her confidence unwavering. But even in a place like this, there were unspoken rules. Rules that determined who was truly welcome, and who was merely tolerated. Rules that had been written long before she was born. She knew these rules existed. She had seen them play out in cases she studied in law school, in news headlines, in whispered conversations her mother had tried to shield her from. But she had never expected to be reminded of them so soon. Because just ahead, the sharp wail of a security alarm was about to slice through the city's rhythm. And Officer Randall Carter was about to remind Maya exactly where she stood. The air buzzed with the usual energy of Boston's financial district, professionals moving with purpose, taxis honking, the scent of fresh coffee wafting from upscale cafes. Maya, lost in thought about her upcoming meeting, barely noticed the elegant boutique she was passing. Then, the sharp, piercing wail of a security alarm shattered the normalcy. Beep, beep, beep. Heads snapped toward the sound. Pedestrians slowed their steps, curiosity flickering across their faces. Maya instinctively paused, turning toward the noise. She frowned. The alarm was blaring from the high-end Raven & Company boutique, a luxury store known for its overpriced handbags and designer shoes. Her heartbeat picked up, but not out of fear. She had not stepped foot inside that store. Must be a technical glitch, she thought, shaking her head as she continued walking. But as she moved forward, she noticed something odd. Several other people had walked past that store at the same time. A white man in a tailored suit, a teenage girl clutching a shopping bag, yet none of them looked worried. And then, she saw him. Officer Randall Carter. His stance was rigid, eyes scanning the crowd like a predator hunting its prey. The moment his gaze landed on Maya, his entire demeanor shifted. Carter did not hesitate. "You! Stop right there!" The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She barely had time to process before the officer started toward her, hand already resting on his baton. Is he talking to me? Her confusion deepened as she noticed something chilling. He was only looking at her. Not the white man who had walked by seconds before. Not the teenage girl holding a shopping bag. Just her. Maya's feet rooted to the pavement as Carter stormed up to her. "Stay calm." "Excuse me?" she said, voice even. Carter scoffed. "You know damn well what this is about." Maya blinked, incredulous. "I have no idea what you are talking about." Carter folded his arms, voice dripping with amusement. "Oh, so now you do not know? Funny. That alarm went off just as you walked by." Maya's chest tightened. "That does not mean I took anything. I never even stepped inside that store." Carter chuckled, shaking his head. "Uh-huh. That is what they all say." By now, the scene had drawn a crowd. "What is going on?" someone whispered. "Looks like she stole something," another murmured. "Damn, this does not look right," a young man said, already recording. Maya could feel dozens of eyes drilling into her, the weight of judgment pressed against her skin, suffocating. This is how it starts. Carter was loving the attention. He stepped closer, voice loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Shoplifting, huh? Guess you thought you could just walk out of here." Maya's nostrils flared, but she held her ground. "Check the store's security footage," she said firmly. Carter smirked. "Nah, I do not need a video to tell me when someone looks suspicious." The words hung in the air like poison. Someone in the crowd scoffed. "Oh, come on, man. That is profiling." A white woman, carrying an actual bag from the boutique, walked past them, completely ignored. Maya turned, motioning toward her. "So, you are stopping me? But not her?" Carter's smirk widened. "Lady, do you really want to make this harder on yourself?" Maya squared her shoulders. She could see where this was going. She had read about it, studied cases just like this. How quickly a false accusation could turn into a deadly situation. But she would not let him break her. She did not shrink. She did not beg. She did not cower. "I am asking you, one last time. Check the footage." Carter's smirk faltered for just a second. She was not panicking. She was not playing the role he wanted her to. The crowd was still recording. The bystanders were whispering. This was not going exactly the way he planned. So he decided to push harder. With a practiced sigh, he stepped forward. "All right, since you want to be difficult, turn around and put your hands behind your back." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maya's heart slammed against her ribs. "What? You cannot be serious." Carter reached for his handcuffs, smiling. "I am dead serious, sweetheart. You are under arrest." And just like that, the power shifted once again. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Maya's life unraveled in real time. Cameras flashed, videos were being uploaded, and Officer Carter? He was just getting started. Carter's fingers tightened around his handcuffs, his smirk widening. "Last chance, sweetheart. Hands behind your back." Maya stood her ground. "On what charges?" she demanded, voice steady. The crowd around them murmured, their curiosity shifting into concern. "She did not do anything, man," someone called out. Carter ignored it. His hand hovered near his baton, a subtle but deliberate show of dominance. He thinks I will back down, Maya realized, that I will panic and make this easy for him. But she refused to play along. She raised her chin, her voice sharp as a blade. "I am not moving until you show me proof that I did something wrong." Carter exhaled, like he was bored. "That is cute," he muttered, then grabbed her wrist, hard. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Instinct kicked in. Maya yanked her arm back. It was not resistance. It was self-preservation. But that was all Carter needed. He turned the moment into a performance. "Stop resisting!" Carter bellowed, loud enough for the whole block to hear. The shift in the crowd was immediate. Some gasped. Others hesitated, unsure, and a few people stopped recording. This is how it happens, Maya thought, her pulse racing. This is how they justify force, how they twist the truth. Carter grinned, sensing her realization. "You are making this worse for yourself." Maya forced herself to breathe. "He is baiting me, trying to turn me into the aggressor." Some people in the crowd were buying it. "She should just comply," a woman whispered. "Maybe she really did steal something," a man muttered. Maya clenched her fists, rage simmering beneath her skin. She knew one wrong move, one raised voice, one defensive flinch, and she would be on the ground with a knee on her back. Carter was done playing. With a forceful jerk, he twisted her arms behind her. Maya winced, but bit her tongue. She would not give him the reaction he wanted. Cold steel snapped around her wrists. Click. Click. Carter tightened the cuffs unnecessarily, grinning as Maya's jaw tensed in pain. "You people never learn," he muttered. Another ripple went through the crowd. A few people turned away, uncomfortable. Others continued recording. A white woman watching sighed, shaking her head, but she walked away. Maya felt the heat of 100 stares on her back. She wasn't Maya Thompson, Harvard law student, anymore. In their eyes, she was just another black woman in handcuffs. Maya's breaths came slow and measured as Carter pushed her forward, guiding her toward the squad car. The realization hit her like a punch. No one was stopping this. No one was stepping in. They would record. They would whisper. But they would not fight for her. Carter shoved her toward the car door. "Watch your head," he mocked. Maya glared at him, refusing to look small. But the power balance was already set. He was in control. She was in cuffs. And everyone else? They had already decided this was not their problem. With a final shove, Carter threw her into the back of the police cruiser. The doors slammed shut. The crowd outside blurred. The world had just decided her fate, and no one knew that fate was about to change. The police cruiser rumbled through the streets, but Maya barely noticed. Her wrists throbbed from the tight cuffs. Her shoulders ached from the force Carter had used to shove her inside. Maya stared out the window, watching the city pass by like a world she was no longer a part of. People were still walking, still laughing, still sipping their overpriced lattes, as if an innocent woman's life was not unraveling just a few feet away. They will figure this out soon. This is a mistake. I am a Harvard law student. I have never been arrested. They will check the footage, and I will walk out of here. But deep down, she knew the truth. The system was not designed to protect her. It was designed to break her. The station was cold and sterile, buzzing with fluorescent lights and low murmurs from other officers. Carter yanked Maya out of the car, marching her through the entrance. Officers barely glanced at her. A young black woman in cuffs was nothing new to them. One officer snickered. "Another one off the streets, huh?" Carter chuckled. "Yeah, this one thought she was a lawyer or something. Kept running her mouth." Maya's stomach churned. They did not see her as Maya Thompson. They saw her as a statistic. They led her to a dimly lit holding cell, where she was shoved inside without ceremony. The cold metal bench felt like ice against her skin. Her wrists, now raw from the cuffs, stung with every movement. "I know my rights. I know my rights. I want my phone call." The officer processing her barely looked up. "Later. I have a right to legal counsel. I need to call my lawyer." I said later. Minutes stretched into hours. No phone call, no explanations, just silence. This was how they broke people. They made you wait, made you feel powerless. But Maya refused to break. "They want me to lose it. They want me to scream, cry, beg. I will not give them that satisfaction." She straightened her spine, inhaled deeply, and prepared for the fight ahead. Morning came, and with it, the sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway. "Thompson, time to go." Maya's hands were once again cuffed as she was dragged toward the courtroom. "They want me to look guilty. They want me to walk in here like a criminal, not a law student." The moment she stepped into the courtroom, she felt the weight of judgment settle onto her shoulders. The judge, a middle-aged white man, barely glanced at her as he shuffled through his papers. The prosecutor looked uninterested, as if she was just another routine case. And her public defender? A man who looked like he had too many cases and not enough sleep. This is not a defense. This is a formality. I want to speak to my attorney. The judge sighed. Public defender is assigned to you. Let's move forward. Maya's jaw clenched. They want this over with. They do not care what is true. They just want to process me like I am a case number, not a person. And then, the prosecution called Officer Randall Carter to the stand. Carter walked up with the smugness of a man who had done this before. Because he had. Your Honor, I apprehended the suspect outside Raven & Company after the store alarm was triggered. The suspect became aggressive and resisted arrest. Suspect, not her. Not Maya. Just suspect. He had stripped her identity in a single sentence. Then, Carter went in for the kill. And according to our records, this is not her first time in trouble. She has a history of theft. Maya's entire body went still. What? Her fists clenched beneath the table. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even the public defender looked up in mild surprise. Lies. She had never been arrested before. But Carter was so confident, so rehearsed, that no one questioned it. Maya turned toward her lawyer. Object. Do something. The public defender sighed. There is nothing I can do. Nothing? Nothing? This was the system. A white officer's word was enough to rewrite history, and Maya was watching her own life being twisted into a lie. The state recommends immediate sentencing. Her stomach dropped. This was not justice. This was a machine, built to crush people like her. But what no one in that courtroom knew, that machine was about to break. Because outside the courtroom, something was happening. The doors were about to burst open, and the U.S. Marshals were coming. Bam! The heavy courtroom doors burst open. The sound echoed through the room, making the judge look up for the first time since Maya entered. 2 U.S. Marshals strode in, their navy blue jackets stamped with bold gold lettering. U.S. Marshals. The room, which had been drowning in silent acceptance of Maya's fate, suddenly shifted. The judge frowned, clearing his throat. What is the meaning of this? The lead marshal, a tall, broad-shouldered black man with an authoritative presence, spoke firmly. Your Honor, we have new evidence that changes this entire case. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maya's heart pounded. New evidence? Carter stiffened, but quickly masked it with an unimpressed smirk. Oh, come on, Carter scoffed. This is an open and shut case. What evidence? The marshal did not even look at him. He turned to the judge. Permission to present footage. Maya felt the air shift. This was it. The moment everything changed. The judge hesitated but finally waved a hand. Proceed. A court officer rolled in a screen and the lights dimmed slightly. The courtroom, once ready to convict Maya without a second thought, was suddenly silent. The U.S. Marshal pressed play. The footage flickered to life. Every eye locked onto the screen. The Raven & Company boutique entrance. The exact moment the alarm had blared. And there, clear as day, was the real shoplifter. A white man, dressed in a hoodie and jeans, walking out of the store, completely unnoticed. The crowd inhaled sharply. Maya had never even stepped inside. The video zoomed in, playing in slow motion. The truth was undeniable. Maya let out a slow breath, gripping the table. I knew it. I knew it. Carter shifted in his seat. The marshal's voice cut through the heavy silence. This footage was obtained directly from Raven & Company's security system. The defendant was nowhere near the crime scene. The real thief? Never stopped. Never questioned. The judge adjusted his glasses. For the first time, he actually looked at Maya. Carter's jaw tightened. The once arrogant officer was no longer leaning back in his seat. His confidence cracked, piece by piece. The judge turned to him. Officer Carter, do you have an explanation for this? Carter swallowed hard. For the first time, he was unsure of what to do. The courtroom's energy had flipped. The same people who had been silent as Maya was humiliated were now leaning forward, eager to see justice turn against one of their own. "I knew something was off," someone whispered. "They arrested the wrong person." The U.S. Marshal was not done. He stepped forward, pulling out a file. "Oh, and that is not all, Your Honor. We ran a background check on Officer Randall Carter." The tension in the room sharpened. Maya's pulse thrummed. This is not the first time he has done this. And just like that, Carter's world began to collapse. The tension in the courtroom was thick, suffocating. The U.S. Marshal's voice was steady, but his words carried weight like a hammer crashing down. "We reviewed Officer Randall Carter's records. This is not the first time he has falsely arrested a black citizen." Gasps filled the room. Maya's fingers curled into fists beneath the table. "I knew it." The screen changed, flashing report after report. 5 previous cases. 5 wrongful arrests. All black. All dismissed due to lack of evidence. "His pattern is clear, Your Honor. He targets minorities, abuses his power, and fabricates evidence to justify his arrests." The murmurs turned into a roar. "How did no one catch this before? He has been doing this for years." The judge's face darkened as he adjusted his glasses. "Officer Carter, do you have a response?" Carter opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, he had no excuse, no lie quick enough to save him. The judge's gavel struck the desk. "Effective immediately, all charges against Maya Thompson are dismissed." The words sent a shockwave through Maya's body. "It is over. I am free." The bailiff stepped forward, unlocking Maya's handcuffs with a sharp click. She inhaled deeply, flexing her sore wrists. The shift in power was undeniable. She was no longer the accused. She was the victor. Maya rose from her seat, standing taller than she ever had before. Carter looked at her then, and for the first time, she saw something new in his eyes. Fear. Carter's hands gripped the table, knuckles white. The U.S. Marshal took another step forward. "Officer Carter, you are under investigation for misconduct and racial profiling. Hand over your badge and weapon." The courtroom went dead silent. Carter's face turned pale. This was not how it was supposed to go. "Wait. This is insane. I was doing my job," he stammered. The judge's voice was cold. "Your job is to uphold the law, not abuse it." The final power shift was happening. "Hand them over, Carter." The entire courtroom watched as Carter hesitated, then, with shaking hands, unclipped his badge and gun. Maya met his eyes. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She just watched as the system finally swallowed one of its own. And for the first time in his career, Carter knew what it felt like to be powerless. The tension in the courtroom reached its peak. The U.S. Marshals did not hesitate. Click. Click. "Randall Carter, you are under arrest for misconduct, falsifying reports, and racial profiling." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Carter's face went ghostly white. "What? You cannot be serious," he sputtered, shaking his head in disbelief. But it was real, and there was nothing he could do about it. Maya watched, arms crossed, her bruised wrists a reminder of what he had done. He thought he was untouchable, thought the system would always protect him. Not today. A marshal grabbed Carter's wrist, yanking it behind his back. "You have the right to remain silent." Funny how those words sounded different when they were directed at him. Then, with a sharp snap, his own handcuffs were locked around his wrists. The same cuffs he had used to humiliate Maya. And just like that, the man who thrived on power had lost everything. The entire room was frozen. Jurors whispered in shock. The prosecutors shifted uncomfortably. A woman in the front row covered her mouth, eyes wide. No one had expected this. The system never turned on its own. But today, it did. Maya stood still, absorbing the moment. "He did not just arrest me, he tried to destroy me. Now look at him." Carter, once so smug, now looked small, pathetic, powerless. "I was just doing my job," he cried. That is what they all say. The marshals ignored his protests, gripping his arms tighter. Let us go. You are done here. And just like that, Carter was dragged away. Maya exhaled, letting the weight of everything settle. She was free. She had won. And the man who had tried to ruin her? Now, he was the one in chains. As Maya stepped through the courthouse doors, a wave of noise hit her. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, microphones stretched toward her. She was no longer a suspect, no longer the accused. She was a symbol. The air was different now. Hours ago she had walked into this courthouse in handcuffs, humiliated, branded as guilty before trial. Now, she walked out free. But not unchanged. The crowd outside had doubled. Some were strangers. Some were activists. Some had been there since the beginning, recording everything. A man clapped as she walked down the steps. A woman held a sign that read, "Justice for Maya." This was bigger than just one case. Maya stopped at the last step, feeling the weight of their eyes on her. Officer Carter was gone now, but the fight? That was just beginning. A reporter pushed forward. Maya, what would you like to say about today's events? Silence fell over the crowd. All eyes on her, waiting, listening. This was her moment. Her voice would not be silenced. She took a deep breath. Then, she spoke. This is not just my story. This is the reality for too many of us. Murmurs swept through the crowd. How many more innocent people have been arrested, harassed, and humiliated because of racial profiling? Her voice was steady, but her words carried fire. How many more Randall Carters are out there? How many more lives have been ruined by officers who abuse their power? The crowd erupted in agreement. Some shouted, others clapped. Maya looked straight into the cameras. Today, I walked out of this courthouse free, but not everyone gets that chance. This fight is not over. By that evening, her speech was everywhere. News channels played the footage on repeat. Social media exploded with hashtags. #Justice for Maya, #End racial profiling. Civil rights groups rallied behind her case. Politicians took notice. What had started as a false arrest had now become a national conversation. Maya had come here today as a law student. Now, she was something more. A fighter, a voice, a movement. And this? This was just the beginning. Randall Carter had always believed he was untouchable. He had worn his badge like a shield, convinced the system would always protect him. But now, that badge was gone. The headlines were brutal. Boston officer fired after racial profiling scandal. Randall Carter faces criminal charges for false arrests. How many more officers like Carter are out there? His colleagues no longer looked him in the eye. His department distanced themselves, calling him a disgrace to the force. His pension, in jeopardy. His legal fees, mounting. His career, over. The system that once protected him had finally turned its back. Carter sat in the same cold courtroom where he once testified against Maya. This seat felt different now. The judge, who once barely acknowledged Maya, now looked directly at him. Mr. Carter, you are facing multiple charges, including falsifying reports and abuse of power. The irony was not lost on anyone. Now, he was the one fighting against a system that did not favor him. The officers who had once laughed with him now escorted him out. The cameras were waiting outside, but this time, Carter walked out in handcuffs. And Maya? She did not need revenge. Justice had already been served. The courtroom doors slammed shut behind Carter, sealing his fate. Maya stepped outside, the cold air hitting her like a reset. Reporters still called her name, but she did not need to speak anymore. The truth had already been told. Justice had already answered. She looked across the street, where a new wave of protesters stood, holding signs. Justice for all, not just some. Hold corrupt cops accountable. This was bigger than her. It always had been. Maya turned, walking away. Not as a victim, but as a fighter. And as the cameras rolled, her final words echoed through the headlines. This time, justice did not fail. It turned the tables. Mic drop. Scene closed.